Good evening, everybody. We're just waiting for people to join the webinar, so we'll just wait a couple of minutes and then we'll kick off. Okay, it's gone 6 o'clock, and I think we've got most of the attendees have come in, so we'll kick off our webinar. Tēnā koutou katoa, kia I tātou e te nei, ka nui taku mihi. Ko kaiwaka here o I te kone here o Rohe o Taranaki, ko Mike Neal toku inoa. Nō reira, tēnā tātou katoa. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this webinar for potential candidates of the Taranaki Regional Council. Welcome, everybody, and hopefully we have a reasonably fun and informative evening. Couple of housekeeping matters. I'll introduce myself first. Apologies for that. My name's Mike Neal. I'm the Director of Corporate Services at Taranaki Regional Council, part of the team that's delivering this year's elections. Later on in the session, you'll be hearing from Ben Rosser from Election Services New Zealand, who are running the elections on our behalf. We are recording this webinar, and so we can put it on our website at the end of the session for those that don't have the opportunity to attend today's webinar but are still interested in standing for the Regional Council. They'll be able to watch the webinar at that stage. During the session, any questions that you might have, just type them up in the chat box or in the question and answers bar, and we'll answer any questions in two stages, one at the end of Ben's presentation and then one at the end of my presentation. So we'll kick off. So the first presentation will be from Ben. As I said, Ben is from Election Services, and Ben will be covering the administrative, legal, operational side of the election. We'll then break for any questions for Ben. Then I'll do a presentation on the specifics that relate to the Taranaki Regional Council, and again we'll have an opportunity for questions at the end of that session. I've got a helper beside me that will read out those questions, and we'll be able to answer them online for you. So without any further delays, I'll hand over to Ben to take you through the operational part of the election process.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. Kia ora koutou. I'll assume that you can see me, hear me, and see my presentation, unless I'm told otherwise. So it is great to be here remotely with you all this evening, whether you've joined us in the webinar or you're watching this online after it's posted. Really grateful to have you along with us as we talk through the process of becoming a candidate for the Taranaki Regional Council. I'm Ben Rosser, so I work with Election Services, and we conduct election services for about 23 local authorities across New Zealand. Everything from the Far North District Council in the south down to Clutha, Far North District Council in the north down to Clutha in the south, and a whole lot of councils in between, including the Taranaki Regional Council and the 3 territorial authorities, which are New Plymouth, Stratford, and South Taranaki. It's my job tonight to talk you through the nuts and bolts of becoming a candidate. I'll also talk a little bit more generally about how the election process works, and campaigning and voting, results, and all that sort of thing. More than happy to take questions, so if you've got any questions, throw them into the chat. At the end of this presentation, we'll go over those questions. Doesn't matter whether it relates to the first slide here or the last slide. Quite happy to take questions. We'll also point out that we are very approachable at Election Services, so if you have any questions after tonight, you're more than welcome to get in touch with us. Got our contact details at the end of this presentation. You can pick up the phone and call us, or give us an email, and we'd be more than happy to assist you, especially if you're working through your nomination and you need any guidance in submitting it. So if I do my job correctly tonight, and you want to stand as a candidate, then you'll make sure you have your nomination in before nominations close without any issues, and you'll be straight into the election process. What I'm going to talk to you tonight, importantly, it's how you become a candidate. The process is fairly prescribed under legislation, so we've got to get it right if you're going to be a candidate. I'll also talk to you about what you need to know about campaigning. So as Mike said, some of the rules and what the law requires around campaigning. I'm sure you're also interested in how the voting process works. So we'll talk about the voting period and how people can actually vote in these elections. I've got some key terms here just to get us started. So the point of these terms is just to make sure that you understand what I'm talking about. TRC is the Taranaki Regional Council. So that's what we're here to talk about, how you can become a candidate for the Taranaki Regional Council. TA, that refers to Territorial Authority. So there are 3 district councils that are situated within the Taranaki Regional Council area. That's New Plymouth, South Taranaki, and Stratford. It's pretty hard to talk about these elections without referring to those 3 TAs. I won't focus on them, but I'll refer to them when necessary. So an elector, that's someone who is eligible to vote, someone who has enrolled on the electoral roll. So it's a person who is an adult and they are enrolled on either the Māori or general electoral roll. The electoral roll is just a list of electors. So it's a list of people who are eligible to vote. There is no specific electoral roll for the Taranaki Regional Council. We compile an electoral roll for the 3 TAs, and that is what makes up the electoral roll for the Taranaki Regional Council. I just mentioned the Māori and general electoral rolls. So these are 2 separate rolls. People of Māori descent can apply to enrol on the Māori electoral roll or the general electoral roll, and everyone else is on the general electoral roll. The electoral roll, for the most part, is the same as the parliamentary electoral roll. So if you voted at the recent 2023 parliamentary election, you're probably still enrolled to vote for these local elections. We don't actually administer the residential electoral roll. It's done by the Electoral Commission. So if you have questions about which address you're enrolled on the electoral roll at, it all goes through the Electoral Commission. Best thing to do is to go to their website. So their website is vote.nz, and that's where you can check where you are enrolled on the electoral roll, and importantly, it will allow you to update your details if you need to do so. I'm going to talk about the electoral roll as we go throughout this presentation, but I just wanted to make sure that that term is understood from the get-go. As I said before, there are 3 territorial authorities in the Taranaki Regional Council area, and those elections are held alongside the Taranaki Regional Council. So wherever you are enrolled in the Regional Council area, you'll be voting for the Regional Council on the same voting document as how you'll be voting for the Territorial Authority. More on that later, but just making it clear that there are different organisations here. We're here to talk about the Taranaki Regional Council, but there are also those 3 territorial authorities. Key election dates, I'm going to go through each of these throughout the presentation, but I'll quickly summarise the timeline here. So nominations, if you want to be a candidate, you've got to become nominated as a candidate. The nomination period is open. It opened about a week ago on the 4th of July, and it will close at 12 noon on the 1st of August. So if you want to be a candidate, you've got to be nominated via the official process. There are 2 ways to do it. You either do it with a paper form, a hard copy form that you print off or you get from the Regional Council, and then you fill it in and then submit it in person, or you do your nomination online, and I'll talk you through that process in a little bit. But the important thing to remember is that nominations close at 12 noon on the 1st of August. There's no provision under the Local Electoral Act for us to apply any exception to that. Once 12 noon hits on the 1st of August, if you're not nominated by that point, it is too late to submit your nomination. Voting is going to open on the 9th of September. There's a little bit of a longer voting period this time around. In 2022, it was around about a 3 to 4 week voting period. Now it's up to 5 weeks. With the decline in the postal service, the voting period has been extended. So voting will be open for about 5 weeks. That's when people are receiving their votes in the mail and voting. There's different ways people can vote, but it is a postal election. So they will receive their votes in the post. They fill them out, and then they either post them back or they drop them off to a ballot box in the district. Voting is going to shut at 12 noon on the 11th of October. Just like with the close of nominations, there's really no exception to that date. You can't vote once voting has closed. So at 12 noon on election day, all the ballot boxes will be closed off. There is really no way to vote after 12 noon on election day. Shortly after voting closes, we're going to release a progress result. So that will contain something like 90% of the vote. It will give you a reasonable idea of whether or not you have been successful, but we stress that it is not a final result and you shouldn't go out celebrating just based on that progress result. The following day, on the 12th of October, we'll release a preliminary result. This will contain something like 98% of the vote, so it's a better indication of whether or not you have been successful. It's still not a final result, though. That will come on the 17th of October. That's once we've gone through the process of checking all of the special votes and making sure that all of the special votes are valid. So the 17th of October, that's when the final result is published, and that's when you know for sure whether you have been successful or not. Some general information about the Taranaki Regional Council. It's a pretty big area, population of around about 130,000 people, and 90,000 of them are electors. So 90,000 people eligible to vote in the election. 82,500 of these electors are on the general electoral roll, and the remaining 7,500 are on the Māori electoral roll. Now, candidates are going to be listed in alphabetical order by surname. There is one exception to this, which is the South Taranaki District Council. So those candidates are going to be listed in pseudo-random order. That means that the list of candidates is randomized, but then that randomized list is applied to every voting document. So with the exception of the South Taranaki District Council candidates, all candidates are listed in alphabetical order by surname. Pretty big topic this time around are the Māori constituency and Māori ward polls. So these are the polls that will determine whether or not the Māori wards and constituencies are disestablished or not. I'm going to talk about those in a moment, but just for your awareness, there will be polls held with these elections, and that will determine whether or not the Māori constituencies or polls remain or not. I said before that elections are being held for the constituent territorial authorities. Once again, that's New Plymouth District Council, Stratford District Council, and South Taranaki District Council. So depending on which of these three councils down the bottom you live in, you'll be voting for one of them, and you'll be voting for your constituency of the Taranaki Regional Council. So what's up for election? Well, there are 11 councillors. 10 of them are general constituency councillors. So you can see there's 5 from New Plymouth, 2 from North Taranaki, 1 from Stratford, and 2 from South Taranaki. And then there is the 1 Taranaki Māori constituency councillor. And I'll let Mike talk a little bit later about these constituencies and more specifically about the Taranaki Regional Council.
I think you're a slide out of kilter with your presentation, what you're discussing, and the slide you've got on the page.
Ah, it's looking fine for me. That's interesting.
Okay, maybe go forward one more.
Yeah.
And one more. So now you're on elections required NPDC.
Ah, okay. Sorry about that. Well, I'll use my hard copy to keep track of it in that case. NPDC. So you're on the NPDC slide at the moment?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Well, I won't dwell on the NPDC election, but for your information, there are elections held for the New Plymouth District Council. So you can see here, they'll be electing a mayor as well as district councillors, both from general wards and Māori wards. They also elect community board members. So you'll see these on your voting document as well if you're in a community board area. So I suppose at this point you can see is it the South Taranaki District Council? Or... Yeah.
Stratford District.
Okay. This is quite interesting. So for the Stratford District Council, they're also going to be electing a mayor. They're also going to be electing general and Māori ward councillors. They don't have community board members, so there are no community board elections there. Moving on to the South Taranaki District Council, which I think is what you're seeing on your screen right now. So they're also electing a mayor. They're also electing general and Māori ward councillors. They've also got community board members. So if you're in the South Taranaki District Council, you'll also have community board members on your voting document. At this point, I think you can see the slide for the Māori ward and constituency polls. So as I mentioned, there will be 2 polls held. One is for the Taranaki Māori constituency, and one will be for the respective district councils' Māori wards. These are separate polls. You don't have to vote for the same way for each of these polls. You don't have to vote for both. You don't have to vote for any. You can decide to vote how you like for each of these polls. The important thing is that you don't vote for more than one option for the same poll. So you don't vote to keep the Māori ward and remove the Māori ward. You only vote for one or the other. Same thing with the Māori constituency. Make sure you're only ticking one of these boxes. You either want to keep the Māori constituency or you want to vote to remove the Māori constituency. Just some more information about these polls. They are binding, so the councils will have to apply the outcome. It's a simple majority wins situation where whichever of the options gets 50% or more is the winner, and the council will have to apply that outcome. It will apply for the next 2 triennial elections. So if you get elected to the Māori constituency, you will be the Māori constituency councillor for the 2025 to 2028 term, and regardless of the outcome. So if the outcome of the poll is to remove the Māori constituency, that constituency will still be in place for the 2025 to 2028 term, but it wouldn't be in place for the 2025 to 2028, 2028 to 2031 terms. So it applies for 2 terms, but not the one coming up. This is what it will look like on your voting document. I'm assuming you can see the slide with the 2 Māori issues. They won't actually be side by side on your voting document. You'll have initially...
Sorry, Ben, you're on the electoral system one, which has got the candidates A through E with
Okay.
on candidate B.
All right. I think I've talked enough about the Māori ward and constituency polls. Yeah. Look, if you have any questions about anything that I've talked about, sorry that the slides might be out of kilter. More than happy to go over anything in more detail. Happy to go back if you'd like. It's completely fine. Now we're going to talk about the electoral systems. So there are 2 systems in place here. We've got, what have we got first? We've got first past the post. So that is going to be held by the Taranaki Regional Council, Stratford District Council, and the South Taranaki District Council. This is a fairly straightforward electoral system where you tick the candidate or candidates that you wish to vote for. What's important is that you don't vote for more candidates than there are on the voting document. You don't vote for more candidates than there are positions. So if there's the mayoral election, which only has one position, you only vote for one candidate. If there are 2 vacancies, don't vote for more than 2 candidates. The candidate or candidates with the most votes wins. And so, like I said, it is relatively straightforward. You just tick the candidates that you want to vote for. I think at this point you're looking at the slide about the New Plymouth District Council using STV. So they use single transferable voting. If you are in the New Plymouth District Council area, you'll be voting for the New Plymouth District Council candidates, and they use STV. So this is a form of preferential voting. You don't tick candidates, you rank them in the order of your preference. So you rank them 1 through to however many you want to rank. You can rank as many candidates as you want, or you can just rank 1. That's completely up to you. Like I said, it's a form of preferential voting. It's a little bit more complicated when it comes to actually counting the votes, but it is relatively straightforward for actually voting. You just rank the candidates in the order of your preference. Candidate eligibility. So you should be looking at the slide which talks about the fact that you need to be a New Zealand citizen and 18 years or over to be a candidate. So you've got to be on the electoral roll somewhere within New Zealand. You don't have to be on the electoral roll in the area that you're standing for, nor do you need to be on the electoral roll in the constituency that you're standing for. So you can be on the electoral roll anywhere in the country and be a candidate for the Taranaki Regional Council. What is important is that you're nominated by 2 people who are enrolled in the area that you're standing for, and they're enrolled on the respective role. So if you're going to stand for the Stratford General constituency, your 2 nominators need to be enrolled in that area, and they need to be on the general electoral roll. Likewise, if you're going to stand for the Taranaki Māori constituency, your nominators need to be enrolled in the Taranaki area and on the Māori electoral roll. There are some restrictions about what you can stand for. So you can't stand for more than 1 constituency, and you can't stand for both the Taranaki Regional Council and one of the territorial authorities. So you couldn't stand for the Taranaki Regional Council and the New Plymouth District Council, for example. You also can't be an elected member if you or your spouse have a contract with council over $25,000 without approval. So if you think that this might apply for you, we recommend that you seek advice. And if necessary, then you need approval from the Office of the Auditor General. If you're a council employee, you can stand, but you'd have to resign should you get elected. And the last point here is that you can't nominate yourself. So the nomination criteria applies regardless of who it is. It could be your spouse or your child. They can nominate you as long as they meet that criteria. It just can't be yourself. So let's talk about the process of actually becoming a candidate. The first thing we recommend you do is get a copy of the relevant council's candidate information handbook. So you can get a PDF copy of the Taranaki Regional Council's handbook, for example. It's got pretty much everything you need to know to be a candidate, including what I'm talking about here tonight. It's got all of the nomination criteria, the election signs, policies, guidelines around campaigning. It's got everything you need to know. So nomination process, as I said, nominations are open, and there are 2 ways you can become a candidate. The easiest way of doing this is by going online. We have an online nominations portal that you can use to submit your nomination. It's pretty easy to do, and it's pretty convenient to do. So you create an account, and then you can start setting up your nomination. One of the beneficial things about this portal is that it is able to check that you and your nominators are correctly enrolled. This means that you can make sure that you're enrolled in the right area, your nominators are enrolled in the right area on the appropriate electoral roll before you proceed. The downside with the paper nomination is that you might not know until you actually go to physically submit it that one of your nominators isn't enrolled. You don't have to use this online nominations portal. You could use the paper submission. So you can get yourself an editable PDF from the council's website, fill it in, print it off, sign it, get your nominators to sign it as well, and then hand it into one of the locations here. Little screenshot here of the portal, which I believe you can see. Like I said, it's quite easy to do and quite convenient. You don't have to print anything off or handwrite any information. You can enter it in electronically, you can sign it electronically, you can upload your photograph rather than printing out your photograph, as well as instantly confirming that your nominators are eligible. Nomination process, so what else do you need for your nomination? Each nomination needs a $200 deposit. You don't have to supply a statement or a photograph, but we recommend you do. Most candidates do. The statement has a word limit of 150 words. You can also supply a te reo Māori translation. So if you want to have your statement in English and te reo Māori, it's completely fine. As long as those two statements generally mean the same thing, that's completely fine. Photograph, just got to be a photo of you, so not someone else. Make sure it's a photograph that's sort of a head and shoulders kind of profile picture. We don't want to see anyone else in your photo or your pets or your car or anything like that. Now, we also need to see evidence of your citizenship, just so that we know that you are a New Zealand citizen. So this could be a copy of your passport or your birth certificate or evidence of your citizenship ceremony. We just need to know that you are a citizen. Affiliation, so you can declare an affiliation if you're endorsed by a political party or group, or you're connected with a group or a ticket, and you're all standing together, like-minded, standing on a similar platform, for example. You can declare an affiliation. Whether you're submitting your nomination online or through the paper, you just got to write down the name of your affiliation and provide evidence that you have permission to use that affiliation. So the evidence would be a letter, for example, from the group or from the group's secretary, just something that tells us that you have permission to use that affiliation. Now, other options here, you can have no affiliation. It can just be blank, or you can be independent. If you want to demonstrate that you're specifically not associated with a group or party, you can list your affiliation as independent. If it's going to be independent or blank, you wouldn't need to provide us with a letter. Some affiliations are unacceptable, so we don't want to see just a slogan there like "vote for me" or anything like that, nor can it be unnecessarily long or indecent, slanderous, that sort of thing. Some other things that you need to put down on your nomination.
So Ben, you're still stuck on the nomination process slide. So I think
Oh,
your slides aren't progressing forward. Yeah.
okay.
So that's the nomination process slide.
Yeah. How about now?
Now we've got the how it appears in the booklet, the nomination process booklet,
Okay.
and that's
All right.
without a photo. Now we've got without a photo, without a.
Okay. I wonder if there might just be a significant delay or something.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. Well, sorry about that.
carry on anyway.
Yep. Just last thing I want to point out about the actual submission of your nomination is that you need to have your principal place of residence. So that's where you are enrolled on the electoral roll. If you're enrolled in the area or outside of the area, you also need to state if you're standing for any other positions. This wouldn't be the case if you're a candidate for the Taranaki Regional Council. But if you were to be standing in a district council and you're standing for multiple positions, you've got to have that there as well. So, like I said, hopefully you can see what Mike just described, which is how it will appear in the voting profile. So here we have a candidate. I do hope you can see it. We've got a candidate with a photograph. He's got an affiliation. You can see his statement there. This is how it's going to look on the voting profile. If you don't have a photo, then it will just simply say no photo provided. Likewise with the statement, it will just say no statement provided if you choose not to supply one. Give the slides some time to progress, and hopefully you can see what I was just describing. I'll carry on anyway, and if there is any...
Yeah, the slide you've got now is vote eligibility.
Okay, great. So if you are on the general electoral roll, these are the issues that you'd be able to vote for. So the first few are for the district council, that's the territorial authority, the mayor, district-wide councillors, if the council has district-wide councillors, general ward councillors and community board members, also the Māori ward poll for the district council, and then you have the Taranaki Regional Council issues. So if you're on the general electoral roll, you're voting in the general constituency for the Taranaki Regional Council, and you're voting for the Māori constituency poll. If you're on the Māori electoral roll, you'd have a similar list of issues to vote for. Again, the mayor, district-wide councillors. Your vote for the ward councillor would be for the Māori ward councillor. You'd also get to vote for the community board members. You'd also be able to vote for the Māori ward poll. And then you get to the Taranaki Regional Council issues. So that would be the Māori constituency councillor and the Māori constituency poll. I'm going to start talking about campaigning, and at some point you'll be able to see the slide. So campaigning, that can start anytime. You can declare that you are going to be a candidate. If you haven't already submitted your nomination, there's no rules stopping you from campaigning. Any rules around election signs that are specific to the timing of placement or where you're actually going to put them or the physical dimensions, those depend on which council area you're placing your sign. So if you're placing them in the New Plymouth District Council area, they're subject to the New Plymouth District Council's election signs policies. Or if you're placing them in the Stratford District Council area, then they're subject to the Stratford District Council election signs policies. So good idea to read the respective council's election signs policy. We've included all three in the handbook for the Taranaki Regional Council. So as long as you've got the Taranaki Regional Council handbook, you will be able to find the relevant council's election signs policy. More broadly, election sign advertisements need to have an authorization statement. So whether it's a sign or a social media post or a pamphlet or a flyer in a fish and chip shop, they do need to have an authorization statement on them. And that sets out the name and the contact details of the person who has authorized that advertisement. In most cases, it's going to be you, the candidate, but it could also be your campaign manager or party secretary or something like that. So an example of an authorization statement might be authorized by Joe Bloggs and then the phone number for Joe Bloggs. In the past, the authorization statement had to have the physical address, the residential address of the person. That's no longer the case, just got to have a contact detail. So a phone number is fine, a PO box is fine, email address is fine. Just got to be a way for us to contact you if you are placing an election advertisement. If you're going to use social media, and most people do these days, you wouldn't have to put the authorization statement on every single post. For example, if you're going to be advertising on Facebook, you could put your authorization statement just once on your main page, and then you wouldn't have to put it on every single post. I just mentioned social media. It's a pretty common way for candidates to campaign. Lots of good reasons why you might use social media. We do advise you to stay safe online, stay away from fake news, just be mindful about being hacked and all that sort of stuff. Important point here on campaigning is that council social media channels are not for campaigning. So they're off limits for you to post advertisements or endorsements or anything like that. Council will monitor their social media channels and they'll remove any post that is campaigning. I'll start talking about donations, and let me know if you can't see the slide or any issue. You can receive donations to spend on your campaign.
Move forward one page, Ben.
How about now?
Perfect. Donations.
Okay. So like I said, donations, yep, you can get them, you can receive them, and you can spend that money on your campaign. There's no limit as to what you can raise to spend on your campaign. There is a limit to what you can spend. So shortly we'll talk about expenditure limits. You do need to record who has given you a donation so that you can declare it after the election. If you're going to receive an anonymous donation, and it's hard to understand in this day and age how a donation can actually be anonymous, but if you do get one, it can't be more than $1,500. If you think you might have an anonymous donation and you're worried about it, you can ask us for advice. We'd be more than happy to talk you through that. So now I think you can see the campaign spend limit.
Yep.
So there's a limit on how much you can spend on your campaign. It's dependent on the position that you're standing for. So depending on which position you stand for, there's a different limit. It comes down to how many people live in the area that you're standing for. Most candidates don't go anywhere near the limits. If you're concerned that you might, what you really want to know is do you need to declare something because you're worried about getting to the limit? You can get in touch with us and we can talk you through that. Generally, our advice is be transparent, declare everything. You've just got no reason not to. The last thing you want is for one of your competitors to go through your declaration and try and find something that you've excluded. So, like I said, get in touch with us if you've got specific concerns. Now, the limits do include GST, and like I said, you've got to declare them. So in your nomination form, you'll have a template to fill out. You've got to fill it out and submit it, regardless of whether or not you actually spend any money or raise any money. Even if it's a nil return, you'll just write nil on it, send it back to us. We do enforce that, so we will be checking with you to make sure we get it back from you. 11th of December is the deadline for that. Be mindful of the fact that it is a public document for 7 years. So perhaps some candidates might not want to declare something if they don't want it to be public. We advise you be transparent about that, even though it is a public document. Just take care to ensure it is accurate. Voting. So of course we're going to talk about the voting process. As I said, it is a postal vote. So voting opens on the 9th of September. That's when all of the votes will be posted out. Not everyone is going to receive their vote on the same day. Even those who live in the same household may not receive their vote on the same day. There's about a 2-week period where all of the votes will be delivered. So in that first 2 weeks, people will be receiving their votes in the post. It's another reason to make sure that your electoral enrolment is accurate and up to date, so that when voting opens, you get your vote in the mail. So the 22nd of September, that's the date when everyone should have received their vote by. It's about a 2-week period. You're able to campaign throughout the voting period. You don't have to stop campaigning. Even on election day, you can keep campaigning. If someone doesn't receive their vote in the mail, or they spoil their vote, or they lose it, they can cast a special vote. That's particularly important for people who enrol after the votes go out, or they change their address but don't update their electoral enrolment. They can go and cast a special vote. Locations are in the handbook and they'll be on Council's website for doing that. We can also post out special votes if we need to. So people can call our office and we will post out special votes if anyone needs one. We're also going to publish a daily return schedule. That's just a little graph that will tell you how the voting is progressing. You'll notice that a lot of the voting tends to happen in the latter stages of the voting period. We strongly advise that you don't return anyone else's vote. Don't go out there and collect votes from people. Encourage them to vote, but don't pick up their votes and take them in. People have got to return their own vote. Now, there are going to be some ballot boxes, so if people don't want to use the postal voting system, they can take their votes into a council location and hand deliver their votes. That's completely fine as well, as long as it happens before the close of voting, which is 12 noon on the 11th of October. If they're going to post their vote back, it's got to be received by the time voting closes, so we do encourage people not to post their vote back in that last week. It's around about the Tuesday before election day on Saturday. That's sort of the last time you want to be posting your vote back. So if it's after that time and you still haven't voted, take it into a council location, drop it in a ballot box. As I said, we will be releasing a progress result on election day shortly after voting closes. So this will contain all of the ordinary votes received up until the Friday. So it won't contain any special votes, and it won't contain any hand-delivered votes on the Saturday. We don't know exactly what proportion of the vote it will be, but it's somewhere around 90%. So if it's a close election, it doesn't mean that it's final. We do point out there, please don't assume that the progress result is final. We have seen outcomes change in the past. Council is going to contact you on election day, so if you're a candidate, you can expect to be contacted to hear about that progress result. The media will also be advised, so keep that in mind as well. The next day, the Sunday, that's when we will release a preliminary result. So that will contain all of the ordinary votes. So all of the ordinary votes, but no special votes. Again, we don't know exactly what proportion of the vote that will be, but it's somewhere around 98%. It's a pretty good indication of whether or not you've been successful, but still not a final result. That'll come on the 17th of October once all of the special votes have been checked and validated. If you are successful, you'll take office the day after the public notice declaring the results. We expect that to be the 18th of October. But you can't act as a councillor until you're sworn in at the first meeting. So some resources here, Candidate Information Handbook, which I've talked about. Get a copy of that if you don't already have one. The pre-election report from the council, that's another really good resource. Also the legislation.
You're halfway between two slides. Can you flick back to the resources slide?
Okay.
Back one. You're now on Contact Us. Resource, perfect. Stop.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, plenty of resources to get. Legislation, most of it is in the handbook. But if you wanted to get a copy of the Local Electoral Act, you can do that online as well. You could also attend a council meeting, read the minutes, give you a better idea of what it's like to actually be a councillor. Most importantly, you can listen to Mike's presentation coming up, which will give you a better idea of what it's like to be a councillor. And of course, I hope you can see at the moment our contact details. If you can't, you can contact us on 0800 922 822. We'll be more than happy to talk you through any part of this presentation, as well as any other questions that you might have. So Dale Ofsosky, he is the electoral officer for the Taranaki Regional Council. His email address is there if you can see it. And Mike Nowd from the Taranaki Regional Council. So I'm sorry that the slide progression hasn't worked as seamlessly as I'd hoped, but that does take me to the end of my presentation. And now over to any questions that you might have I suppose there might be a few if some of the screen share was a little bit out of kilter.
So, Ben, we had one question on the skills required of a councillor, and I'll touch on that in my presentation a little bit. Whilst I'm pulling up my presentation, if there's any questions that webinar attendees would like to put in the Q&A box or the chat box, now's a good time for questions for Ben. Otherwise, there'll be further opportunity for questions at the end of my presentation as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have welcome everybody again. As I said, my name at the start my name is Mike Neild. I'm the Director of Corporate Services here at the Taranaki Regional Council. We have this is an electoral process. It's a neutral process, so we this is why you've got officers speaking rather than existing councillors or our chairperson. So our role is largely based around the sustainable use, development and protection of Taranaki's natural and physical resources. We're there largely around resource management, biosecurity, biodiversity. It's about 60 to 70% of our work. And if that's what interests you, that's where most of our work is undertaken. We have responsibilities around safeguarding resources and people, hazard management, that sort of thing, and we do have a role in looking after Taranaki's regional interests. We do all of this in undertaking our partnership obligations with Māoridom and particularly taking into account Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi. We do this under the strap lines of working with people and caring for Taranaki, with the ultimate aim of having a thriving and prosperous Taranaki. Where we differ from our district council cousins is that we've got a similar legislative framework but different functions. Our district council cousins tend to be more interested in delivery of local services such as water, wastewater, rubbish, roads, those sorts of things. They say a picture conveys 1,000 words. Here's a little video that touches on our areas of activities that maybe covers 10,000 words. So as I said, that was a very brief snippet of our responsibilities and roles, and I'll dive onto that a little bit more in the upcoming slides. As a governor, as a councillor, an elected official, the council meets every 6 weeks. And you can see the Taranaki Regional Council at the top there. There are a number of committees that do a lot of the detailed work and then make recommendations to the full council. And those are those 3 committees that are on the left-hand side there. The Executive Audit and Risk, Operations and Regulatory and Policy and Planning Committees. They meet also 6 weekly. They do the vast majority of the work, and that work is then confirmed by the full council. For our Operations and Regulatory Committee and our Policy and Planning Committee, we have external representatives there from iwi and from other bodies such as district councils and federated farmers. And what we're trying to do there is get as wide and a diverse set of views and opinions as we can into our decision making. We then have the other the other committees off to the right: Regional Transport, Stadium Taranaki Joint Committee, Taranaki Solid Waste Management Committee, Passenger Transport Joint Committee, and Civil Defence Management Group. Now, these are smaller groups, smaller committees that meet on a specific purpose. They tend to meet 3 or 4 times a year, and they're workload driven. So if there's plenty of work to be done, those committees will be meeting quite frequently, and if not, then less so. Again, some of those committees have external representatives where we're trying to get that as wide a group of views and opinions as we possibly can. Council employs our chief executive, being Steve Ruru, and Steve employs the rest of the council staff. And the organisation is split into 4 operational areas. Our operations area, which is is very much the hands-on, getting your hands dirty part of the business. Biosecurity, biodiversity, river control, land management. We've got the resource management team, which is looking after policy and planning matters, consent processing, and pollution response. We have our environment quality team. It's dealing largely with the science side of the business. We're very much a science and evidence-based organisation. And then you have myself in the Corporate Services Division, which is providing the support services and ancillary services that enable the rest of the organisation to undertake its business. So what do we do in more detail? In the resource management area, we're dealing with planning, and particularly our land and freshwater plan, consent processing, compliance monitoring, responding to pollution, and dealing with state of the environment monitoring and the necessary science that supports that. In the catchment management area, we've got our land management services, again, largely driven around freshwater management, but also then we have our biosecurity and biodiversity activities, possum control and that sort of activity. We have a partnership with the government in the Towards Predator-Free Taranaki project, where we're looking to make Taranaki predator-free from not just possums, but mustelids, rats, mice, that sort of thing, a huge project. We've also got responsibilities to work with iwi and hapu on the Waitara River catchment, and we're dealing there with the freeholding of leasehold lands in Waitara that came about from treaty settlement processes. So that's an upcoming project in the next few years. We have public transport responsibilities, so we look after transport planning across the region, but we also provide a range of bus services, mostly in and around New Plymouth, but also in our rural areas, the connector service, 4 times daily return between New Plymouth and Hawara. We have a very small navigation and safety function in and around Port Taranaki. In the flood protection and hazard management area, we've got responsibilities to deal with river and flood control issues, and we have a number of flood control schemes, the 2 biggest being in the Waitara River and the Waiwakaho River. Protecting, there's a picture there that you can see of the stop banks that are protecting the valley. We're also involved, along with the 3 district councils, in civil defence and emergency management activities. We have a number of regional facilities that we look after and work in partnership with others on. The big ticket item there is Stadium Taranaki, who we work with the Taranaki Stadium Trust and the New Plymouth District Council. And of course, we've just completed our major redevelopment and earthquake proofing of the stadium. But also significant in our regional facilities area are our three, we call them regional gardens, but they're actually gardens of international and or national significance, being Tupare, Pukeeti and Hollard Gardens. We work in partnership with trusts that set up those gardens originally. Last but not least, we have a regional leadership and governance role of advocating on behalf of the regional community, both locally and nationally. And we also hold the 100% ownership of Port Taranaki Limited, that on behalf of the regional community. They have their own board of directors and management team. So for us, it's about managing the investment returns that we get from the port. We get about $8 million a year in dividend returns from the port, and they're used to subsidise rates and give a rate return to the community. Like most local government, we're controlled by our documents and our policy documents, and we have a range of those, led mostly by our long-term plan. We have a land and freshwater plan that's in development, and that's one of our major issues as we attend to the new Resource Management Act obligations. But we also have air plans and coastal plans, biosecurity and biodiversity strategies, regional land transport plans, asset management plans. And underpinning all of that, we have a huge amount of legislation. But probably the biggest piece of legislation that drives our activities is the Resource Management Act, which of course is under reform at the moment from the current government. So what are the challenges ahead for us? What do we face in the next 3 years if you stand and get elected as a councillor? What are we working our way through? So first and foremost, it's how we manage our natural resources, and particularly how we address the change coming from the new Resource Management Act legislation. How do we deal with the rapid pace of change that's coming from the government? We have a government that's doing legislative change on the fly very quickly, and we're having to respond to that. So we fully anticipate that will carry on in the foreseeable future. We have a strong relationship with Maori, iwi hapu in our decision making, and that will evolve over time, and particularly as the current government makes its legislative changes. As I said before, the big ticket item is our new land and freshwater plan, and what that will look like, how we implement it, and what that means for the future of Taranaki's economy. We've got, as most central and local government bodies are doing, we're figuring out how to adapt to climate change, and what our role in responding to climate change might be. In line with that climate change and is the growth in our public transport systems, and over the next few generations, we're going to increasingly see more reliance on public transport as we move away from dependence on fossil fuels. So the challenges over the next few years are going to be how do we effectively grow our bus network and public transport networks over a largely rural area, New Plymouth aside. Biosecurity and biodiversity, there are significant funding challenges for our schemes as we move forward, as the government looks to reduce the amount of money that it invests in biosecurity and biodiversity. So we need to figure out how, as a region, we're going to respond to those changes and protect the investments we've made to date in the biosecurity and biodiversity area. So a huge workload in the next 3 years and some significant chunky issues that we're going to have to face up to in the next 3 years. So we've got an election, and Ben's covered a lot of this already. We have constituencies, whereas district councils have wards. If you get elected, you're obligated under law to act for the betterment of the whole region, not just the district or the constituency you're elected from. I'll deal with the 5 constituencies on the next slide, but we also have, as Ben outlined, the Maori constituency poll that is part and parcel of this election and will dictate representation for the next 2 elections moving forward. So what are our constituencies? So there is a map of the region, and that dotted line, which encompasses just about the whole region, except for that area to our far east in and around Whangamomona, which is part of Stratford District Council, but is part of the Manawatu Whanganui Regional Council based on water catchments. But that dotted line encompasses the rest of the region, and it is our Taranaki Maori constituency, and we have one person elected from that constituency. We've then split up the rest of the region into 4 general constituencies based on population numbers. So the bigger the population area, the more councillors you have in that area. South Taranaki there, the boundaries line up beautifully with South Taranaki District Council, and we have 2 councillors coming from South Taranaki. Stratford aligns very closely, except for that Whangamomona area, has quite a small population for its area size, and has 1 councillor elected from that constituency. We've then taken the New Plymouth District Council area and split it into an urban area in and around New Plymouth and Okato, and that has 5 councillors coming from that area. And the rural area of Englewood, Waitara, Uranui North has 2 councillors coming from North Taranaki. So give or take, each councillor is representing sort of 11 to 12,000 electors. What is the commitment and obligation for a councillor? So first and foremost, councillors are interested in developing policy and strategic direction. It is the responsibility of staff to deliver the operational side of it. So councillors are about setting policy, making sure policy is delivered, and monitoring that part of it. We have 6 weekly cycles for our council meetings and the 3 major committees, and 3 to 4 times a year for our regional land transport and other committees that I talked about. Meetings last about 2 hours each, plus preparation time. I've got to say there is an awful lot of reading involved in the preparation time for council meetings. Agendas can be 300, 400, 500 pages long. We get them out a week or so before the meeting, but there's a lot of reading and a lot of content to be digested. And last but not least, there's a range of other functions that councillors are involved with: functions, training, conferences, induction, and the like. There was a question asked as in the middle of Ben's presentation about what sort of skills should a councillor have. So hopefully this is giving you a flavour. But for the regional council, an understanding of a natural inclination to resource management, the natural environment, sustainable development and use of resources would be really useful. skills around governance and setting policy and monitoring policy implementation would be useful. Speed reading skills would absolutely be advantageous, but that ability to digest information and form views and form representative views on how the whole region feels about those various issues. So those are the kind of skills that a councillor would have. So when you're elected as a councillor, you're attending meetings, which is where the work is done. We do have standing orders that govern meetings, which do bring a level of formality to those meetings. But we do try and engage and try and have open discussions and conversations to take out the wider views, so we don't have the strict formality that some other councils do have. We have a level of informality as well. All agendas and meetings are electronic. We provide technology, both hardware and software, so that you get your agendas electronically. We stopped providing paper agendas quite a few years ago and have saved a couple of forests by not doing that. So you have to be comfortable working in that electronic environment. You're working as a team, part of a bigger team. You need to be able to work collegially, form consensuses on views, as well as representing the whole region as a constituency. So, remuneration. What do you get paid for doing all this hard work? All remuneration is set by the Remuneration Authority, which is a body of Parliament, an independent body of Parliament. They set the salaries of our councillors, and they provide a pool of money for those that take on extra duties. So what they've said at the moment in the current remuneration framework is the chairperson gets paid $116,000. Each councillor gets a minimum allowable remuneration of almost $39,000. And we've split the pool up in agreement with the Remuneration Authority to reflect those other duties. So the deputy chairperson gets 56.5, as does the chairperson of those three major committees. And those smaller or minor committees get 45,000, almost 46,000. And a councillor that's just has no additional responsibilities will get just shy of $41,000. So a little bit higher than that minimum set by the Remuneration Authority. The Remuneration Authority has set certain guidelines for post the election. So the chairperson will be paid $118,500. The minimum allowable remuneration is $39,500, and we've got that pool that's available to be allocated for additional responsibilities. So that'll be a duty of the new council when they set their committee structure and they allocate those responsibilities to councillors. They'll allocate remuneration, and the Remuneration Authority will approve or otherwise those extra duties. Regional councils are different from our territorial authorities in one key manner. That is, when you elect the district council people, you vote for a mayor. Whereas for regional council, you just elect the councillors and the councillors elect the chairperson. So there's one quite significant difference on who you vote for. But anyway, those are all issues that we work our way through after the election. So that's a once over very lightly on our roles and responsibilities, what it's like to be a councillor and all the rest of it. Very happy to answer any questions that might have come in or people have got. So have we got any questions that have come in?
Yeah, we do, Mike. One here, does age matter in terms of having skills and knowledge?
Um, no is the short answer. We've had some very young, skillful councillors in the past, and yet we've had some really seasoned, older councillors that bring life knowledge and all the rest of it to it. So no, I think personally, if you get a nice balance of experience and youth and different views, you're more likely to make better decisions as a council than if you're all young or you're all old. So I think getting a nice balance is good. Any other questions or?
No others have come through at the moment.
Okay, so we'll stay online for a couple of minutes. If anybody's got any questions, quickly type away in either the chat box or the Q&A box, and we'll give people a couple of minutes to do any further questions. Otherwise, Ben and I are very happy to take phone calls or emails over the next few days as you consider standing for council. Nominations have to be in by the 4th of August. So we encourage councillors that want to stand to get their nominations in nice and early. Otherwise, please don't leave it to the last minute in case anything goes wrong.
Vote in on the 1st of August.
Sorry, 1st of August.
Yep.
My apologies. I don't. It's important to get these dates right. So, nominations close on the 1st of August at 12 noon sharp, and there will be a strict cut-off. I don't think any further questions have come in. Okay. We will put this recording up on our website. So I just want to, and I strongly recommend potential councillors, go and look at our website. It has got information on how to stand. It's got the candidate information handbook that Ben talked about. It's got the pre-election report that was mentioned. The website contains an awful lot more information about what we do and what we get up to. So good to get your additional information and questions answered there. Anything else is available, or give us a bell and all the rest of it. Otherwise, we'll put a recording of this meeting online, and we'll wish you all a very good evening and best of luck with getting your nominations in and going through the election process. Thank you, Ben, for your election services update and the organisational, the logistical framework that we operate in. That's good. And I wish everybody a good night and best of luck. Thank you very much. Good night.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.